Excellent. Welcome. I am Karen Pelto with Berkshire Funding Focus, and this is a presentation for the out-of-school time partners and grant information and support available from BFF. And the slides are not advancing, which is excellent. There we go. All right. So just to give everyone a foundational understanding of Berkshire Funding Focus, we help nearly everyone in the county become aware of and more competitive for, up to this point, state and federal grant funding, although we are starting to look at and help with more foundation-based funding as well. And primarily 4 ways. First is that we search for these grant opportunities and post them to our website. Our website now also will include some foundation funding that you can search for moving forward. We help build capacity by offering workshops such as this. We convene potential partners for collaborative proposals and consult. If you see a grant solicitation or you receive an award and you want to understand what the government is or other funders are asking you to do, we're here to answer those questions for you. And we're really here for you at each step. And so I will go through these to provide an overview of one, which is kind of things you need in your back pocket. Second, the map that the funders provide for you that you really need to learn how to read. 3, partnerships, which are sometimes required but always helpful. The matching game, making sure you're really providing what the funder is looking for, and then putting all the pieces together for a successful application or proposal. And so when it comes to a checklist, for a nonprofit community partner, you really need to make sure that you have filed the appropriate documents with both the Massachusetts Secretary of State, which has a corporations division, which sounds like a business, but you are a nonprofit corporation. You need to file your articles of organization, annual reports, and every year you should request a copy of your certificate of good standing, because many, particularly state funders, are going to ask you to submit that with your proposal. The Massachusetts Attorney General's office also has a public charities division that requires registration and annual compliance, and they will also send, I believe, you don't have to request, but they will send a letter every year indicating your good status. For applying for state grants, while it's often not required at the application step, it's still worth doing, because when you get a grant contract, you will need to do this, which is register as a vendor in the state's procurement system called Combis. And then if you do take the plunge into the federal grant world, you will first need to apply for and receive a unique entity identifier, which is kind of like your social security number for your organization. And both state and federal grants, and often some foundation grants as well, will want to see the written letter from the IRS that you are truly a Section 501, usually C3, but there can be, for example, C6s for chambers of commerce, for example. They'll want to see that letter or a copy of that letter. And then most nonprofits are not aware that they can also get certified as through the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Office. So if you are led by any of the groups listed here, you can become certified, and that may help with certain grant applications that you might want to pursue. In terms of the map, that is usually, when it comes to state grants, a request for proposals or a request for responses. For federal grants, it's usually a notice of funding opportunity. For foundation grants, they might issue their own RFP. Sometimes it's an application. Sometimes it's based on relationships. They're all very, very different. But what you will see in all of these cases, you'll see who's eligible to apply, what types of projects are eligible to be funded. When it comes to government, you really need to pay attention to the agency priorities, and we'll get into that a little bit later, and the evaluation criteria. Particularly for government grants, it is all about them avoiding risk because they're spending the public's money and they want to spend it well. So they want to know you're ready to perform and you have the capacity to actually complete the work. Can you deliver? Do you have prior experience? Have you identified any constraints and obstacles and how you might overcome them? And this I can't emphasize enough, no matter what kind of grant it is, absolutely read the application's instructions at least 3 times. Particularly with government grants, it can be a real challenge. But I always say I'm fluent in bureaucrat. I'm here to help. I'm here to help you understand what they're asking for. But you really need to make sure you read all of the documents because this will make sure that you address everything that's needed. Don't just read, well, what do they want in your application? Because there are other sections that will help you understand what you might want to emphasize a little more strongly than other aspects of what you're proposing to do. Partnerships. Some grants require it, but most grants certainly, proposals certainly benefit from this being a partnership-based approach. And one of the things BFF can do is help convene partners, help guide the conversation, help really set forth roles and responsibilities. Sometimes, like I said, it's required, but sometimes it might be necessary because, say, for example, there's a particular grant that you think would really be a perfect fit, but only municipalities are eligible. Well, you might be able to partner with them to provide some of the services, obviously funded by the grant, that would help make the project really sing. Sometimes you want a partnership because there's another organization that has more experience with a government grant or a particular foundation that they have a relationship with, and you really will need to build that experience by working with them as a partner. You might want to leverage different strengths and skills, but no matter what reason you'd enter into a partnership, you want to make sure it's built on mutual respect and a shared vision right from the start. And also make sure each partner has all those documents that we discussed earlier in their back pocket so that you're not scrambling with each other right before a submission deadline. And the matching game. You probably have a good sense of everything on the left about what you're passionate about, what is the issue you want to address, who's going to benefit, what kinds of outcomes you hope to see, how will you measure those outcomes? And you might be really very, like I said, very passionate and very clear on those items, but you need to make sure they match what is in the solicitation, either the agency or the foundation of priorities. And how does that agency or foundation state the need? Make sure you state it in the same terms and make sure there's a real match there between what they want to fund and what you want to do. And make sure you're clear and aligned with what the agency feels, who the agency feels needs to benefit from the project or program, and make sure that you're clear about measurable outcomes, because those agencies and foundations ultimately have to show the benefits to a wider audience or to their higher ups that they've actually made a difference. And they can only do that if the folks that they are funding are tracking progress and tracking outcomes and reporting them up to them. And I find the number one reason proposals fail in terms of grant making is that people are not really making that match. And I love this quote, successful grant writers assess what a proposed project has to offer, understand what the grant making agency wants, and communicates the clear match between the two. Basically, funders want to look in the mirror and they want to see themselves, even though it's you. And so you really need to focus on that aspect. And it takes a lot of work. And so make sure you plan enough time. Don't try to write the grant the day or two before it's due. And particularly when it comes to government grants, it's all about the points. And so everything an agency asks you for, they will evaluate you on. And everything they will evaluate you on, they will ask you for. So don't just read what they want you to submit, read how they're going to evaluate it and make sure you're matching them together. Because in the criteria section, you will be able to discern how they're going to review your content, but also what you can detect sort of what you should really be emphasizing. Because they'll say, this criterion is worth 25 points, but perhaps 10 of those points is this one particular aspect of that section. So make sure that you have addressed it thoroughly. And that will make sure that you, when you go through the review, that you're maximizing your points. And Berkshire Funding Focus, one of the roles that I can play is reviewing proposals and giving you a sense of where you need to beef up your proposal to maximize the points that you would ultimately receive in the review process. And putting the pieces together, it's understanding really all of the elements that need to be in a submittal. These are typical. Not every grant funding agency or foundation is looking for every single one of these, particularly when it comes to forms. You're likely to encounter that mostly in the realm of federal grants, but there might be some for state, and the state ones are usually not as complicated. But you're typically going to have to provide an abstract. And when you're providing that, you're doing two things. One, you're providing something with the agency that or the foundation that they can then use to publicize the funding that they have granted. And two, you're really sort of making your pitch and exciting the reviewer to read on. So don't throw the abstract together just willy-nilly right before you submit. Really put a lot of thought into making sure it's very comprehensive, but also exciting for the reviewer. The narrative, they will typically tell you what they want to see. The budget and the categories within the budget, they'll tell you. Often, the term budget justification is misunderstood by applicants. It's really what every teacher has told you through your whole educational career, which is show your math. Don't just tell me the answer. Don't just tell me you need $100,000. How did you come up with that $100,000? What, if $10,000 of that is supplies, how did you come up with that? What kinds of supplies? How many of each? What are the unit costs? It's really about how you actually came up with the number that you're asking for. I mentioned forms, but also they may ask for or offer you the opportunity for optional attachments. Optional attachments are usually typically something a foundation will allow you to do. Typically with a government funder, they're going to tell you what they want to see in those attachments. And typically those attachments don't affect your page count or typically don't affect the font size. But other aspects, particularly with government grants, they will have page counts and they will be very specific about the font and the size of font and the margins, and it's very strict. And unless they say that a table can have different fonts and sizes, and footnotes can have different fonts and sizes, everything will need to. And grant proposals will not be reviewed if they don't meet those requirements. So it's just very very strict when it comes to the government grants, particularly at the federal level. And so happy to answer any questions. I will be happy to take them at that email or the phone number. I would encourage you to visit our website early and often. We have, like I mentioned, we'll have grant opportunities that are searchable by the type of grant, by the topic that the grant covers. We also have a calendar of training and other grant webinars. And then we have a weekly e-newsletter that you will receive with grant information as well as those webinars, as well as advocacy opportunities within the grant and equity realm. And so I would encourage you to send me an email or give me a call and ask to sign up for those for the newsletter. And I look forward to working with as many of you as possible. And thank you for your attention.